All right, we'll hit record and we'll see what we end up with here for a podcast. So yeah, this was mentioned in dispatches. Again, lost track of the numbering a while ago and not trying to recover at this point. This is the current episode of Mentioned in Dispatches with the Armchair Dragoons. And tonight's guest, a man who apparently lost a bet because he ended up in charge of a wargaming program at a convention, our buddy Ardwolf. Gary, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Well, I'm better now that I'm home. We talked about it a little bit. The car kind of shit the bed on the way back from Buckeye Game Fest, and that was it was not a lot of fun, but at least I was able to limp it into town and wasn't stuck out on the side of the highway somewhere.
Well, at least the car wasn't a total write-off, right? You could have been stranded in West Virginia, and you know what happens to people that get stranded in West Virginia.
Well, it's not as bad as those trying to raft their way down the Chattahoochee River or whatever.
So, well, that's true.
Yeah, I didn't have that problem. For what it's worth, the people of Princeton, West Virginia were very nice, but that is a town without a taxi service. So if you need to get several miles away, you are walking. So the 5-mile hike for the new Serpentine Belt, not a lot of fun after you've been in a car all day.
I'd imagine not.
Yeah, but anyhow, much fun was had in the days leading up to said car problems, and
yes,
that fun was over at Buckeye Game Fest. And so this has got to be like the 20-something Buckeye. I mean, they got to be getting close to 20-something Buckeye Game Fest here, right?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know the exact numbering, to be completely honest about it. I mean, they don't. They just say Buckeye Game Fest 2023, but I know it's been going on for 20 or more years. I've only been involved for the last 5 or 6. So
yeah, in 2006, I was there as Bayonet Games because I still thought I had delusions of being a publisher. And so I actually had a vendor table that year, me and my 3 games for sale. It was either 2006 or 2007 that was the 8th Buckeye Game Fest. And I only know that because I still have the t-shirt that's got the 8 on it. It's like stylized like a meeple and everything. So it was either 2006 or 2007 that was Buckeye Game Fest number 8. And I guess we can do the math from there to figure out what this is.
Well, we're saying 20 plus, regardless of the exact number. So it's been a while. It's been around.
Old enough to drink.
So it's an interesting event, right? It started off as kind of an extension of the Columbus Area Board Game Society. A few years ago, it actually split off from CABS for nonprofit related reasons. They just the way CABS was structured was not really compatible with the way BGF was structured as nonprofits. So they had to split. So now technically, although there's a relationship between the two organizations, the local Columbus Area Board Game Society is a different entity than Buckeye Game Festivals and is run by different people. But Buckeye Game Festivals for the last 3 or 4 years, or 3 or 4 events anyway, has been behind Buckeye Game Fest. These are the same folks who do now the boardroom at Origin. So they bring the enormous 1,500 or whatever it is game library in. It looked bigger this year than when last I saw it. So it ain't getting any smaller. And they've still got, paradoxically, like 2 shelves of war games in there as well. Now it's it's kind of like a general board game event, right? A lot of Euro-American type of board games at a variety of levels, right? Some of which are really simple and fast, and some of which are pretty detailed. I mean, there's an 18xx crew that comes in and reliably plays 18xx games super hardcore for like several days straight. Yeah. But we also have, and this has been the case for a long time, there's what's called the War Room, which, unlike the rest of the convention, which starts on Thursday, actually opens up first thing in the morning on Monday. So it affords those of us who like to play large footprint monster games the opportunity to sit down and play one game for the entire week. Now, we had a bit of a slow start this year. Because Monday, Tuesday, there was only about 6 or 7 people in the room, right? Most of which were tied up with the one big game that ran this year. It was a big game of the La Bataille system, the Battle of Dresden from 1813, Napoleon's 1813 campaign. And it went well. Those guys were crushing it. For several days, very early they'd be running full bore by 9 a.m. and they would run until at least 8 p.m. And it felt like they ran a little longer than that. I mean, they break for lunch and dinner, of course. But the thing is that it's like normally there's like 3 or 4 of these things running in that space on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And that wasn't the case this year. There might have been a couple of pickup things in those first 3 days, but it wasn't really until Wednesday that additional activity started to occur. By the time I got back there on Wednesday, we had started to, I ran my OCS boot camp, which I had full, that was full. So we had, players in there, and some of the BGF people came in on I think Friday and said, "Ooh, there's a lot of people in here." So it's hopping.
Yeah.
So Friday and Saturday, it was pretty hopping, especially, but even on Wednesday, it started to pick up. I want to say that, did you see were you there when they were running the Imperial Struggle tournament?
I was not. I think that was on Thursday. Or I'm sorry.
Okay. Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that was Thursday because I was there all day Friday. I left at dinner time because I had dinner with my folks. So unless they did it late Friday night, I think you guys were doing coin stuff when I left.
Yeah. I think it was Thursday. But they had a 4-player Imperial Struggle tournament, which thanks Ken for setting that up. They had and then I was there running OCS demos, and then the Players Aid were there. They did some coin teach-in plays. They had 2 full sessions, right? So they had 2 4-player games in 2 different slots. So that's 16 seats in that event, of which they filled a couple and I filled one, and but it was fully attended. There was no shortage of folks playing coin stuff. The Song for War guys were there demoing Song for War, which looks continues to look very interesting, and I think they continue to make progress on their goal of getting it on Kickstarter or whatever crowdfunding platform they're going to use. We had a number of pickup things that happened for things like you had your Brave Border Wars event, which ran successfully a couple of times.
Yep.
And we had some pickup things of things like Commands and Colors. And there was a Lamps Are Going Out game. And there were a couple other things that happened as well. Plus a few playtest things like that, like Ken's Saratoga game that he had on the table at one point.
I am sorry I missed the Lamps Are Going Out. I've been wanting to see that one live for a while. I would have happily jumped into that one had I been there.
Well, you should have mentioned it. I could have brought mine. We could have started it.
It's not like we lacked for stuff to play while we were there.
Oh, no. So I mean, I was kind of volunteered myself for this, but they kind of came to me and hey, we'd really like somebody to help out with the war room, and I kind of stretched out my idea for that, which basically involved somebody to kind of get the word out, get some events planned so that there were things on the schedule, which has not traditionally been a strength of Buckeye Game Fest. It's traditionally been there are like planned events, but they're kind of planned in email behind the scenes. So unless you know those people and were on the email circulation, you didn't know about them. And then a lot of the stuff in the big general gaming room, of course, is more or less pickup stuff, right? It's, people that showed up and said, hey, let's, grab whatever random game from the library and play it.
Yeah. So I just took a look where we had published the wargame extract from the Buckeye Game Fest event listing in TTE, and there were 13 things on the schedule. Now, I'm pretty confident there were actually more than 13 things scheduled, because this, I don't think, has everything on here. It's got the Song for War stuff, our Brief Border Wars, the Teach-in Plays were on the schedule, the OCS boot camps were on the schedule.
Yep. See, that's kind of what I did was, man, I made sure that stuff got scheduled. So people would look at the website and know, hey, this stuff's happening, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, I got this email from Mr. Labatt guy 2 months ago that we're going to play, La Battaglia de la Dresda starting on Monday at BGF.
Yeah. But I mean, just looking at this isn't even half the games that I saw being played while we were there.
No, that's true. Yeah, there was plenty to do, right? There wasn't a lot of large format stuff this year. That's something I'd like to bring back. It didn't go away. This is a weird year, right? So Buckeye Game Fest was in April. In the past, it's been in September. So that's a schedule change. That's going to mess up some people's schedules. It's at the new location, which is at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Columbus, which is the same Hyatt Regency that Origins is held in, by the way.
It's attached to the convention center.
Yeah, it's attached to the convention center, and it's part of the convention center complex. So you have most of the amenities that you had for Origins, although, during the week, the food places all closed a little early, not all of them opened at all, actually. It was hard to find coffee on Thursday, for example, after about 1 p.m. And that's that's kind of a problem.
Yeah, no kidding. I will tell you, it was interesting to me, that part of the convention center, I think we even joked while we were there, like the only part of that level of the convention center that I ever see at Origins is the escalator right next to the food court and the food court, because none of the events that I care about at Origins are the ones being held in any of those rooms where Buckeye Game Fest was. So I'm never over there. You know, I'll occasionally go grab some food and go right back, and I'm just not over there very often. So
I mean, last Origins was weird too, right? But so I don't even know what happens in that area in Origins. I know it's used. It's been used for LARPs in the past. I know that, and that might still be the case. I don't know. I have not been down there. I mean, even like the RPG stuff that I do tends to happen either on the convention center side because it's something that Chaosium put on, or it's it's up in the the ballroom on the third floor or somewhere in those wings on the second floor. So I don't even know, but I know there's still stuff going on down there, and it might still be the LARPs. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just haven't gotten involved in that.
I think from what I saw, Buckeye Game Fest overall had the raffle table and the registration area were kind of out in the hallway, which you would expect. There was the one room that was the war room, and it was a pretty good size room.
Oh yeah.
There was the one room with the Artemis Spaceship Bridge Simulator.
Mm-hmm.
There was the one big game room that was connected with the small hallway behind the registration desk to the rather tiny and almost embarrassing vendor room. And then there was one other room across the hall from the main game room that had games in it. And then there was the library room. I think that was everything. So it was one big game room, one smaller game room, and the war room in which tabletop stuff was being played. The library, the vendor room, and the Artemis, I think.
And at the last Buckeye Game Fest, which realized that we of course missed one because of COVID. But the pre-COVID, the last Buckeye Game Fest did actually have a few RPG events as well, and I think they had their own room for that. We didn't have that this year, so I don't know what the plan is to bring that back. I'd imagine, but I'm not really they didn't talk to me about that, and I had enough to do, so it was all good. I
was not at all disappointed in the size of the convention. It seemed very robust. It didn't sprawl like you sometimes see hotel room based conventions do, where they take over like 10 different rooms or something. But the rooms we were in were pretty full.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge facility, right? Even just the Hyatt itself is a huge facility. That Hyatt could easily swallow 5 events this size and still accommodate 2,000 dentists coming in for a conference. So
there was a giant tween-age dance competition going on upstairs for much of the weekend because we kept seeing them coming and going. And I finally asked one of the moms, a cheerleading thing, beauty pageant, and she kind of smiled and laughed, says dance competition. And
there you go.
That's what we were doing. And I said game convention, and she lost all interest.
Oh yeah, I would imagine so. Obviously not one of our volleyball moms.
No. So over in the war room, I gotta say that the space was comfortable, felt full Friday, Saturday. Not first thing Friday morning, but it picked up by lunchtime and stayed fairly full. Those 2 long, narrow strips of tables, I think we probably could have broken up and shifted around a little bit just to make traffic flow a little easier in there. But
that's true.
That's nitpicking. I think the folks that were in there were able to spread out enough. They weren't tripping over each other. They had room to play the games they wanted to play. The folks that needed to leave stuff set up, like the Labatt guys or the Players Aid guys or the Song for War guys, had plenty of space to do that and not be taking game space away from other people. So that was good. But overall, I thought the hotel took good care of us. I think folks that wanted to play something could find something to play, and folks that wanted to stand around and watch had room to do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I felt like everybody I talked to seems like they had a good time. The Labatt guys had a good time. They had a great time arguing about the rules. And they got a good chunk of the way into their game as well. And they had some personnel difficulties. One of their guys was kind of in and out for a lot of the week, so that that's a thing that happened. But I'm very happy with the results of the OCS boot camp. I think I had 6 or 7 new to OCS players sit down with me at various times and spend about 2 hours running a turn in OCS Smolensk. Grant and Alexander for the Players Aid were 2 of those people. That went very well. We got a video out of that. So we'll be seeing that on the Players Aid channel, I should say.
They were the ones sitting down with you when I got there.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, it went really well. Thank you for coming and helping out with the brief border wars, which I thought went pretty well. You filled that up a couple of times as well.
Yeah. For that one, it was just, hey, what's something small footprint that we can get on the schedule that is easy enough to both learn and play in a single sitting, that's not gonna, drive people away with a level of complexity, and that's easy enough to repeat. That let me rephrase. If we got the same person come back for a subsequent play, we weren't stuck doing the same scenario, because it's a quad game. So with the base rules, we could swap out, Turkey invading Cyprus for the Third Indochina War or whatever. So
exactly,
it seemed a good fit for the circumstance, and we ran with it, and it was a good time. It was fun. My Salvadorans got their ass kicked in the second session when I was playing. That
looks like an interesting little scenario. Actually, I'd like to try that one the next time I get to try Brief Border Wars. I think that's the football war is the one I'm gonna want to try.
I will make sure we deconflict you for Origins, so you sit down and try it there.
Yeah, there we go. I won't have. I'll have plenty of free time in between 10-hour sessions of Europa. So. Speaking of which, I want to say that if you want to sit down and play a monster war game for an entire week, we got space for you at Buckeye Game Fest. There's going to be space next year, and my target is going to be to talk to various people to see if we can get some of the OCS guys to come out and do OCS, maybe some of the GTS guys to do GTS, maybe some of the BCS guys to do BCS, and there's even talk of World in Flames next year. Big multiplayer World in Flames, which would be awesome. I would personally jump at that. That'd be fantastic.
I think if you've got a Labatt, an OCS, a GTS, and World in Flames, you've just cut the table space for everything else in that room by 2/3.
Maybe not quite as much as you. Well, so we might need to bring more tables in, but we had plenty of square footage, right? We could easily have gotten in two more big monster games. We would have just needed to bring in 4 or 5 more tables.
Yeah, we need to push the tables around a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, and which we could push the tables around. That wouldn't have been that big a deal. I'm sure we could have got more tables. So we got plenty of space. The room's plenty big. Same place next year, same time, except it's later April. The War Room will open on April 24th, 2023.
For anybody that's wondering, that is already on the convention calendar.
Yep, and I don't know if it's on the Buckeye Game Fest webpage yet or not, but
yeah. So
it has.
Let me clarify.
It is actually.
It is on our calendar. I don't know that it's in the convention only grid extract down below, but I'm going to be updating that in the next few days anyway, because there are several events that they had already passed for this year, so we took them off of the grid, but they hadn't announced their dates for next year. Now enough of those have that I can sit down and do a bulk upload and get a bunch of them on there all together. I will tell you that we are planning to return next year.
Very good.
With Dragoons, and I'm hoping I can drag some other Dragoons in there with me. No idea what we're going to be playing, because we don't plan stuff 3 months out, never mind a year out. So.
Well, if you show up on Monday, we'll get you to play World in Flames.
Unlikely, but sure. Hold your breath for that. For me, getting away that, because I also have the drive involved, it's a little more difficult for me to get away for an entire week like that.
Sure.
I could conceivably come up there early, work from home, because again, I stay with my folks when I'm in Columbus for Origins or any of these things, and do some working from home earlier in the week like that. The challenge is that if I'm working from their place and I'm only down there in the afternoons, that still cuts into the amount of game time I've got down at VGA.
And I'm glad that you got to actually play a couple of games this time too, because you never get time to play games at Origins.
Yeah, the only times I end up playing stuff at Origins is if we're like one person short of filling the table, and so I'll just there was one time we had 3 people show up for tank on tank, so I put 2 of them against each other and I played the other guy and got us 2-player games of tank on tank going. Or the one time we had 3 people show up for a coin game, and so I jumped in and played the 4th faction on that one. So I've had some games in there, but they were sort of foisted on me rather than ones I wanted to. I did play a full Song for War game. The guys were setting up the second scenario, which is the shorter one. It's the 43 scenario that starts a little shorter. It was a blast. I'll tell you, it is a fun game.
Yeah, it looks really cool. And boy, their prototype looks fantastic.
Oh God, yes. Yeah. That is one of the best looking prototypes you are ever gonna. It's funny because for years, like the guys at Cabs that had the OCS corner back there in the back with back when Jim Reasoner was still with us, but Jim and Dave and Alan and those guys back there. For years when I was living in Columbus, they had Beyond the Rhine was the playtest they were doing, and they played the whole thing through and then ran it back the other way and then ran it back again because they got 3 full extended campaign games in with a lot of their feedback going back to MMP and whoever was honcho in the OCS development on that. Look, that was taped together hex grid paper with a lot of highlighter on it. And I distinctly remember, like, them getting notes from the designers and, hey, change this piece of terrain and here comes the Sharpie.
Yep. I've played with with those playtest kits. So although I was not in it at the time, but I played in later playtest kits, and they've actually come a little ways from there, but I mean, they're still pretty rough, right?
Yeah,
they are
nowhere near
guys. Oh yeah, they're an order of magnitude different from and better quality prototype than any Hex Encounter thing I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. So Song for War, in case folks hadn't seen any of the coverage that we had on the site, or my interview with them, or your interview with them, or any of the other stuff about it's World War II in the Mediterranean theater. It looks very Axis and Allies ish. It is in fact not too far too distant a cousin to Axis and Allies. It a little less on the production model, a little more on sort of the actual tactics and the way combat is structured. There is not a lot of downtime for any of the players around the table, so that is good. It keeps people engaged and involved.
Oh, it's just like OCS then.
Yeah, exactly. You can take a nap in the 30 seconds you have in things you have to do.
Go ahead and take your turn. I'll be back later in the day.
Yeah, I'm going to go take my turn over at GTS while that guy's taking a nap.
It keeps you busy moving from table to table to table. No, but it looks like there's very little downtime in that. It's I'm very impressed with what I see of it so far.
Yeah, for folks that are looking for a perfect historical model of what was happening in the Med in 43, that is not your game. The Italians did not have aircraft carriers, right? They just didn't. They do in this game, because you need some way to move air assets around and to try and balance things out a little bit. But that said, while the ahistorical liberties that they took for the purpose of gameplay are going to rankle somebody that wants a pure historical game. For somebody that wants representative fun of the theater, it's a good time. It's a good game. You're going to have fun playing it. It does a very good job of mixing land, sea, and air assets where you've got to pay attention to the whole package. And you get a good time out of it. So
yeah, I mean, it's not campaign for North Africa, right? But you're not getting a detailed simulation. But it looks like a lot of fun, and it seems to me that they have kind of trimmed away a lot of other than the Italians having aircraft carriers, that they've trimmed away some possibilities for ahistoricity just by saying, hey, our game is about the Mediterranean theater, right? Which is an interesting and somewhat undercovered topic in World War II to cover the whole Mediterranean War, right? There's games aplenty on bits and bobs of that, but on the whole thing, there's very little. There's only a couple of examples. Med War, Mare Nostrum, really the only examples I could think of off the top of my head of games that cover the Mediterranean War.
Yeah, the majority of them are if they're naval games, then they're not dealing with the land campaigns at all. If they are land campaigns, they are staying on a single landmass. OCS Sicily, Tobruk, Kasserine, like in DAC, the Salerno 43 that just came out, Anzio, any of those Italian peninsula campaigns. You're not mixing and matching. It's rare that you have a med focused game where you're jumping from North Africa to Sicily to Italy in a single game with land campaigns possible like that. That is not common. And it's rare that you get the games that mix land, sea, and air like that one. The one that comes to mind is an old Against the Odds magazine game that was an Aegean theater specific campaign. And it was hypothetical. It was one the British had planned but never executed. And it was essentially them island hopping from Cyprus towards Greece across the Aegean Sea, trying to retake Crete to varying degrees of success. but that's the only one that I can really think of that does mix and match land, air, and sea across the a campaign like that in the med.
Yeah. It's something to keep an eye out for.
Theater.
Very interested once that hits Kickstarter.
Yeah. So it was mentioned in the video we shot with them there, the really short, like 8-minute mini interview we did with them. They're planning on late summer to hit Kickstarter. They are going to have it with us at Origins. They're going to be bunkered up with us at Origins.
Sweet.
And
we can put it right next to Europa.
Yeah. So after they're done with Song for War, we can tell them, no, this is just like that.
Yeah. Except it's out of print, costs $700, and it takes a year and a half to play.
And
other than that, it's just like that.
Nap during your opponent's turn.
Yeah, absolutely. You go home and let the opponent move, and then you come back the following week.
Yeah, something like that. So again, it was a good time. I definitely recommend the game. As I don't know how well it would work as like the 2-player game with you and a buddy on a Saturday afternoon, the beer and pretzels and the football game on in the background. I'm not sure how well it would work as a 2-player game. As a 4-player game, as a convention kind of thing for an afternoon at a convention, absolutely perfect fit for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and 4 players is a lot easier to swallow than 6, right? It's not too difficult for most people to get 4 players together for a long afternoon to play a game every once in a while. It's a lot harder to do that with 6 people for a game like Civilization, where the game is, maybe less than fun with less than 6 people.
Yeah. Song for War maxes out at 4, where you've got the Allies versus the Axis. So you've got the Americans and Brits on one side and the Germans and Italians on the other. And aside from possibly bringing in a French player that changes sides throughout the game, I don't know where else you would add a player to that scenario.
Well, you could add a second Italian player to represent the Italians after September 1943.
Maybe. I mean, the Russians never got
completely joshing, right? I think it's a great fit at 4. I think it works fine. I don't think you need to squeeze more people into it.
No, and at that point, the table's going to get a little constricted anyway, because 4 fits comfortably around what you're doing there. The Americans and Brits kind of naturally gravitate to either corner based out of Africa, the Brits out of Alexandria and the Americans out of Morocco. The Italians and Germans are much more intermingled because the Italian peninsula is right in the middle of the map and there's Germans on either side of that. So they're a little more intermingled, but again, still it all fits, it all works. It was a good time.
Folks got the hobnob with the Players Aid, so they say they're coming back next year, and I'm certainly going to not let them not come, right? I harassed them into coming, just like I harassed you into coming, and everybody had a great time, and I'm glad, and I will harass you all again next year.
So the goal
is to harass even more people next year.
Yeah. How many other YouTube channels can you harass into showing up is the real question. Can you get Patrick to get there?
Maybe a couple, actually. Thinking about that, I get Doug to come from the Tabletop's Edge. I think he was talking about it this year, and his work just didn't cooperate. But
our buddy BB Mike from My Own Worst Enemy will be retired by then. We'll be running out of excuses.
There you go. Where does he live?
He's in Virginia.
That's not that far. That's drivable.
Yes, he is definitely drivable. I don't know, just because of his personal travel situation, I don't know that we could get Gimpy Gamer to come up there.
Where does he live?
About 12 miles from me.
Oh, okay. So I don't know what his situation is, but I'll be happy to have him along. That would be fine. I mean, I'm not even talking about people with YouTube channels or blogs or whatever. I'm talking, I want to make sure that we have a war room 10 years from now, right? And if nobody uses it, then we won't. So I was very successful this year. Where I think we could improve is to get more of the big games in. The convention, I'll be frank, the convention really likes the monster games because it sells more hotel rooms, which makes them look better with the hotel and gives them more leverage.
Absolutely. I just want to get as many content creators as possible there, so we can do like a Wednesday or Thursday live broadcast where there's 9 of us all in a circle, all looking at our screens while having a whole bunch of everybody else in the background behind us while we're doing it.
That would be amusing, actually, with everybody shouting at each other. That would be fantastic. Total pandemonium.
So we almost had that at the ACDC back in January, because Gimpy, where he's here in town with me, he and I were both live from Gamers Armory that night with Mo. We initially started out sitting there where we could both kind of be on the screen together, except that with the broadcast delay, we were hearing ourselves like 3 seconds later in the headsets compared to live sitting next to each other. And so we had to separate because of the delay.
Oh, yeah.
It was screwing with us a little too much. So we were both there. We were just like 10 feet apart, kind of waving at each other over the laptops. But talk to Mo. We might could get Mo to show up.
Yeah, he's be coming in from Texas. That's not exactly an easy commute, but he's also, been known to come up to the northern part of the country for events in the past. So it is
possible. He's done WBC.
Yeah. Plus Compass Expo.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, we could almost rent a van and drag people up from here because Wargame HQ is here local with me. Gimpy is local here with me. There's another dude who's actually had sponsorship from Gamers Armory on his channel that is local here. And I want to say, for some reason, Grumpy Gamer is what's stuck in my head, but I don't know if that's just because it sounds like Gimpy Gamer, but that might actually be him. There's like 4 or 5 dudes around here that are all content creators that are all based in the difference between us here in Raleigh and you guys in Columbus is y'all are organized.
I've got less content creators in this space than what you got down there is what it sounds like. As far as I'm aware, the only person doing wargame content around here is me.
Yeah, could be, but I'm not convinced that you guys necessarily have more wargamers than we do.
Oh, I'm not convinced of that either.
Yeah.
It's a different style too. I mean, you guys might well have more wargamers, right? But we got more OCS players.
Yes.
So we got we almost got the market cornered on OCS, right? Outside of Tempe, Ohio is like the epicenter of OCS. We got tons of OCS happening here. We had a off the calendar top secret OCS playtest fest last year, last September or something like that I had mentioned because I wasn't supposed to give details about it, but there were about 25 people there, almost all of whom were playing in 4 different games of Cross Channel Attack, the big Normandy D-Day game. So, we got the action is here in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah. If OCS is your thing, that is where to go.
We'll keep you happy.
Yeah. As Gary has flexed on us before, he has turned down OCS games for lack of time.
Seriously, man. Seriously. I had to set aside time but it was stressing me out too. It's like, I got all the stuff to do that's like not gaming stuff that I can't go do this week. It's Buckeye Game Fest, right?
Yeah.
So, that's a stress generating situation.
Of the games that you saw played, not necessarily the ones you were in, was there something that really jumped out at you as, man, I wish I could have played that one while I was there?
Maybe not, since every time I wander over to the Labatt table and say, boy, this looks nice, I could just buy one of the small Labatt games. Then the argument breaks out and I'm like, yep, that's why I don't play Labatt. We're good. I'm good. I'll be over here playing OCS instead. Where we do have rules arguments from time to time, but you look in the book and it's right in the book, right? So we don't have to worry about that. In the case of Labatt, it's like, well, which book do we look at, right? Which of the 17 different rule books do we look at? Each of which is fully supported by its author. I kid, but it's also the struggle is real.
Not
right?
much.
The game that I just jumped out at me was actually one that I did get to play, which was Fire in the Lake. I've owned Fire in the Lake for several years, and I have not had a chance to play it. And to our absolute astonishment, the entire game took about 2 hours.
Yeah.
I expected to be up till 3 a.m. playing that thing, and it took about 2 hours. In fact, hilariously, that we finished a full short scenario of Cuba Libre and a full short scenario of Fire in the Lake in the same time that it took the other table to play a full short scenario of Liberty or Death. So,
and to clarify, everybody was teaching in all 3 of those games. It's not like it's not like you had 4 experienced coin players who could just grab it and start going. Like, you still had to teach people in all 3 of those games.
Yes.
So nobody was advantaged with experienced players. It's just luck of the cards. You guys wrapped up early with Cuba Libre.
Yeah, and I Fire in the Lake's been on my personal to play list for like a while. And it happens that I've been doing some reading in the last month or 2 on Vietnam, right? So I'm a bit hot to play Vietnam games right now, and that was just happened to be the one that came up. That's why I picked the 3rd Indochina scenario of Brief Border Wars, actually, which is of course a different Vietnam conflict than what we call in America the Vietnam War, but still, it's the same vague it's not even really the same part of the world. It's this different part of the country, right? Our Vietnam War took place in South Vietnam. The Third Indochina War takes place in North Vietnam. It's a red Chinese incursion into North Vietnam.
Yeah, at the north end of North Vietnam.
Yes, exactly. Red River Valley. So, that's, a part of Vietnam that was always under communist control since 1954.
Yeah, that was never remotely threatened as a part of the American intervention in South Vietnam.
So. Well, they bombed it, but they didn't invade it at any point. Nor was
it was still there when they were done.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah. So that was kind of a highlight for me. Another highlight for me was just the teaching sessions of OCS, which I'm really happy with the way they went. I think they were received very well. We got to teach some new people OCS. In at least one of those cases, I think it's somebody who is now convinced that they don't need to play OCS again. But, that's valuable too, right? Not everything is for everybody. And I think we all have to be grown-ups and be okay with that.
Yeah. As Chris Weave from Connections Online is fond of saying, sometimes the answer is the experiment was a success. We learned not to do that again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy I tried it because I've now identified it as something that is not for me, and that's okay.
Yeah, I'm delighted I've played Europa twice now. It's been a great time. Both of them time. At least this time it didn't take a year and a half. So there's that.
As the Dragoons proudly charge into their 8th season of Mentioned in Dispatches, we'd like to pause and thank those Patreon supporters who pledged at the regimental patron level. So a heartfelt thanks to Treb Curry, Staggerwing, Patrick Mullen, Mike Quigley, Hethwill Wargames, Patrick Garrity, Robert, Kevin Bertram, and Joseph Knoll for their support of the Armchair Dragoons and enabling us to bring you the best wargaming content we can. You too can sign up as a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/armchairdragoons.
So I've got a couple of kind of BGF specific questions here for you. One is the War Room is heavy hex encounter wargaming, and nowhere aside from a Rising Sun game, nowhere out there did I see really much in the way of any kind of minis gaming. Is that because BGF intentionally steers away from it, or is there a lack of support in the Columbus area for people that would do that? Are they just not wanting to come play at BGF? But does it take up too much space away from other things at the convention? Why no minis guys running around there?
Okay, so first of all, caveat that where I guess we're going to say hex encounter in a super broad sense, because so
tabletop board wargaming.
Yeah, tabletop board wargaming. But you're right, of course, there was like no miniatures presence at all. Nor do I recall off the top of my head of ever seeing any miniatures presence in the War Room. I think it's really just a function of BGF grew out of the Cabs crowd, which is a board game crowd and not a miniatures crowd. And of course, the miniatures folks have their own events, some of which are local. There's like 3 or 4 miniatures events a year within a hour drive of Columbus. So several of which I hadn't even heard of until like last year. But these are events that have been happening forever, right? And I don't do miniatures, so I don't hear about them. Now, as to how much of the miniatures play that happens here in Central Ohio is historical miniatures versus, say, 40K or War Machine or whatever, I haven't the vaguest idea. I would have to be much more engaged with the miniatures community locally than I am to give you an answer to that. But I think it's just a matter in this, to answer your question, I think it's just different audiences. The convention is targeting a different audience. Now, 10 years from now, there could be a miniatures room. I don't know. I'm sure the BGF people would be delighted to have miniatures players there.
Yeah, I just the realistically the minis gaming, even the minis wargaming world is very heavily split between the sci-fi fantasy guys and the historical guys, right? The guys Jim Ozarski and the 1/60 minis led old guard brigade there. That's a different world than the 40K guys and the War Machine guys, like you said.
Well, I mean, certainly there's a very real split between the 98 out of 100 players that play sci-fi or fantasy miniatures and the 2 out of 100 players that play historical miniatures. But maybe I'm magnifying that in my head too, because I don't go to the historical minis events. I don't go to Historicon, which is, like, as far as I'm aware, basically all historical minis. So maybe I'm just judging that unfairly by the stuff I see on the table at the guard tower on Saturday, right?
I'm just wondering if it's worth trying to bring any of those minis dudes into the war room, and if there would be much value added to the war room by doing so. And I'm not convinced there is, but if you've got the war room that's war game focused, why not broaden the pool some, other than it's going to take real estate away from other, because the war room's only so big.
Well, I'm not speaking in any kind of official capacity here, but I would venture to say that the BGF, the Buckeye Game Festivals people, would be delighted to find some space to put some miniatures players, regardless of what that is, whether that's 40K or, Empire or Napoleonics.
Yeah. Just curious, because it was something I didn't see of any kind anywhere at BGF, and knowing it's an outgrowth of cabs does explain away a lot of why that wouldn't be there. But it is a robust enough convention in size and scope that I think it could easily absorb that if they were interested in trying to go do so. So, the other thing I
didn't hear any attendance numbers. Did you hear an attendance number?
I didn't hear any attendance numbers. Eyeballing it compared to other similar smaller conventions I've been to, 650 plus or minus 50.
Oh, okay. I was going to guess 300, but okay.
No, I think
I didn't hear a number either. So it's certainly, if you walked into that big room, and I did walk through it a couple of times, certainly it was packed. There were people, every table was full. So there were a lot of people there.
Yeah. So I never attempted to count, even a rough count of what was in the big room. Just, again, eyeballing it relative to some other smaller conventions I've been to in the past, easily 180 to 200. Both of the times I was in there after Friday morning. Friday morning was pretty sparse. But Friday evening and Saturday, both times Saturday I went in there, easily 180 to 200 people in there. And it was a different group of folks both times. They were noticeably different people in there. I think I mentioned, so the just at one point on Saturday afternoon, I just counted who we had in the war room, and I counted 28. And that 28, I don't think includes the Labatt crew, because I think they were out to lunch when I did that.
Okay. 28 people in a room playing war games is a hopping war game event. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a lot of people, but that is an active place where people are gaming.
Yeah, you figure that's 7 4-player games if you break it down that way. And that's not actually what was going on in there at the time, but that's, about that. So the other thing I wanted to ask about, so the vendor room was pretty sparse, was unimpressive. At previous BGFs.
Don from Enterprise Games, we missed you. Please come back.
So this was the first BGF I've been to in 15 years. I was there in 06 and 07 back when I lived in Columbus, and in 06 I was 1/3 of the vendor hall. And I'm not exaggerating. I was 1/3 of the vendor room. Ron Charity was there. I actually bought a whole bunch of stuff from him while I was there. I think I made zero money on being an exhibitor at BGF, because I spent it all at Ron's table. Are there just not retailers in the area that are interested in being there? Obviously, it's going to be too small for any publishers to really show up for much of anything. Again, the reason I was there as a publisher is I lived in Columbus. I was literally commuting from my house.
So if we had a local publisher right now, that might be worthwhile for them to show up. The dealer's room was fairly sparse. A couple of the local game stores were there, and they had a bunch of games. A lot, at previous Buckeye Game Fest, Enterprise Games from Indianapolis has been there, and they're a rep for GMT. They bring tons of war games. I reliably buy a bunch of stuff from them. It did save me money, Don not coming. So there's that. I got to walk back into the house and say, honey, I didn't buy any games. She's like, what about that new game of the shrink wrap you just walked in with? I won that in the raffle, which is completely true. Swear to God, that's exactly what happened. It's not a war game. Then she looked at it and said, this doesn't look terrible. I'm sure you didn't buy it. So, it's a small event, right? And I don't know that a war game focused, unless it's like a local publisher or something like that, or maybe even a local game store, is necessarily makes it worthwhile. I think there were about 8 or 10 vendors, but a lot of them were like, selling little knickknacks and dice and stuff like that. There were really only about 2 vendors that were selling games. And I'm not sure how big of the dealer hall is a draw to an event like this. And I'm not sure. I'm reasonably sure that the vendor space tables were relatively inexpensive. So there's that.
Yeah. So the point of comparison that I have in mind is Mace, which is a smaller regional convention.
Doesn't that draw like 2,000 people though?
Mace does pull in a bunch, in part because Mace has a very robust RPG component to it that brings in a lot of folks. Mace doesn't hit 2,000. It caps out at around 1,000.
That's a lot of people though, right?
It is a lot, but it is more than you had at BGF, but it's not more than you would be capable of having at BGF, I guess is the best way to say it. We've mentioned it on previous podcasts. Sadly, Mace will be no more. Jeff Smith, who had been the founder and owner of Mace, passed away earlier this year. It was a very short, fairly brutal battle with cancer.
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah. And so there's going to be one more Mace. It's a podcast, so you can't see me holding up the air quotes, right? There's going to be one more Mace. It's officially been called the For Jeff Con, and the number 2 dude from Mace is going to be running this thing, and it's essentially all the proceeds are being donated to the Smith family, after Jeff's passing. So Mace is my point of comparison. It is bigger than BGF was this year. It's not bigger than BGF is capable of being. The vendor room that we'd seen at Mace was much, much more robust than what they had there at BGF, with 4 or 5 publishers, 2 or 3 accessory manufacturers, folks making terrain or dice towers or whatever, 2 or 3 clothing companies. Carolina Game Tables is based like right around the corner from Mace. So Jody and Clint are always there with a couple of tables. And they're also tied in with Studio 2 Publishing. So they've always got a bunch of stuff from Studio 2 on the shelf as well. It just seems that there's probably enough in and around Columbus that you could get Paul to show up from High Flying Dice Games. And even if he sets up a small vendor table in the war room, it wouldn't hurt to have somebody like Paul Rohrbaugh there.
Now, where's he based out of?
Youngsville or Youngstown. Sorry.
I don't know where Youngsville is.
Yeah.
Youngstown, I know where that is. Okay.
Youngsville's on US 1 going north out of here towards Virginia.
Okay.
It's north of Wake Forest.
So I can't vouch for this number. And again, this is unofficial. This is what I remember that I heard at the last BGF, which is again pre-COVID, that the attendance number that I remember hearing was about 350. Okay. Yeah. And remember, it's a pretty compact convention in terms of actual square footage of the rooms that it occupies. So those rooms feel really quite full, quite loud in a lot of cases.
This felt bigger than 350.
See, I think it was probably smaller than the last one. And we're coming off a pandemic here too, right? And it's a different time of the year than it has been in the past. Buckeye Game Fest has always been in September, and suddenly it's in April, right? It's catching the beginning of the convention season rather than the end. And that's going to make a difference too, as attendees adjust their schedules, and vendors adjust their schedules, and people that run events adjust their schedules, and the people that run the convention get jobs out of town and move down to Louisiana. So these things happen. So I would be really surprised to hear an action. Hey, I got no information, right? I've talked to nobody since I walked out of the convention on Saturday night. But I'd be surprised if it had drawn as many people as it did 2 or 3 years ago, the last time they had one. Now, the other variable here is it's at the Hyatt Regency. The sky's the limit as far as space is concerned, right? This is an event that could easily, especially if it starts to bring in RPG people or miniatures people or LARP people or whatever, they could add RPGs next year and draw another 200 people, right? And add 60% to attendance. So, but this convention could swallow 10 events this size and not notice. So there's more rooms even on that corridor that we took that they could use. There's at least 4 other rooms that they could absorb, let alone they could move upstairs. Right. So, there's so much space for them to grow. And if they could grow it, the strategy sessions for which I am totally not involved in, the hotel can certainly absorb as much growth as BGF can accommodate. And certainly, you could get you could turn it into over the span of a couple of years. And I think that may have been part of the rationale from, moving from whatever random hotel in the central Ohio area that they could get to the Hyatt Regency that's downtown. It's central. Everybody knows where it is. A lot of people go to Origins. They know where the bathrooms are. They know where the food is, all that stuff. So it's a very, for me, it's a very comfortable location.
Yeah. Covered parking. Don't underestimate.
Covered parking. The parking is downstairs. And when I was done, I went downstairs and got in my car and drove away. I mean, it was fantastic.
I haven't parked in that garage since Origins of like 2005 because I usually use one of the outer garages. But Saturday it was raining. Some snowflakes actually hit my car on the drive down there. There was no way I was walking around outside to get into the convention center. I said, screw it, whatever the hell it costs, it's worth it. I went all the way down to the bottom of the parking garage because I didn't need to be right up front. I was going to be there for like 10 hours. Who cared how early I was, or how late I was getting out of there. So I went as far down as I could and parked near an elevator. And there were like 3 spaces between me and the blank wall at the end of the garage. That's how far down to the bottom I got. So I hopped in the elevator and figured, all right, I'll get the elevator up to the floor I need, and then I'll just walk around until I find the convention. And I walked out of the elevator, and it's the elevator between the War Room and the Artemis Spaceship Bridge Simulator. I was literally dropped right in the middle of the convention from the elevator. It was awesome.
Yeah.
There was no wandering around.
Parking, for those interested, so this is the covered garage underneath the Hyatt Regency. And it's my favorite, for this event anyway, it's my favorite parking garage because it's right downstairs.
It's mine now.
$15 for all day parking, which is really not that bad.
Which is what you pay for Origins.
Yeah. Absolutely. Except that for Origins, for you and I, where we spend most of our time at the opposite end of the convention, unless you're staying at the Hyatt, it's a dumb parking spot to be in, because then you got to walk all the way to the other end.
I park at that north garage at the other end.
Yeah, me too now.
Yeah. So, no, you're right that BGF could easily absorb some more events. That room across the hall from where we were could be turned into a minis room very easily. The second game room that both times I stuck my head in there had like 3 people in there, probably just taking a break from the main room, could easily be an RPG room, and you could add another 150, 200 people to it.
They could give us the other half of Taft if we needed more space in the war room.
Yeah. So there's definitely room to expand just in that one hallway where we were and not break a sweat. I guess it all comes back to what are the ambitions of the Buckeye Game Fest leadership and what is it they would like this to become. They may be happy just doing board game stuff the way they are and have a couple hundred people in there, have a great time, and don't want it to get any bigger than that because then it's more headache for them. And that's cool.
Well, I'll tell you what, here's how we answer that question. Sometime around next March, we should all get together with the people from Buckeye Game Festivals and have a talk on the internet about it.
Yeah. If only we knew some people that had like a live show or a podcast or something.
Yeah, I'm not being facetious. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the people that actually make decisions. I'm just really loud, right?
No, I was talking about the show on which they could appear.
Well, yeah, I mean that's fine too. We'll find a place for them, right?
Yeah, and look, it's very easy for a couple of chuckleheads like us to say, "You guys should really do this," because we're not the ones doing it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's always very, very easy to volunteer other people's time to do things. And
other
so
volunteers' time.
Yeah, that's sort of what we're doing here. But that said, it was a fun event. I had a good time. I'm glad I went, even with the car breakdown on the way home. I'm glad I went, not just because my parents fed me some really good food a couple of nights there while I was there. Part of this is when it's something like Origins, we're so busy working, we don't get a lot of time just to hang out. Some of the most fun I had.
This was more laid back than that.
Yeah. Look, you and me and Dave went to dinner on Saturday night, and that was a blast. Like that was worth the trip to Columbus. I mean, that was a lot of fun, and not just because Dave bought us dinner. I mean,
and Dave's just sitting back thinking, "Wow, these guys can friggin' talk! Holy cow! Just turn them loose." Just let them go.
Well, that and Dave gave you like 4 episode ideas that we're going to have to work on at some point.
That's true too.
So that wasn't the worst thing to come out of all of this. But it was great to see Dave there. The Players Aid dudes, like you said, I didn't interact with them near as much as you did because by the time I got there, everybody was busy doing stuff. And so from that perspective, it did feel a little Origins-y. We're sort of waving at each other across the room, or both teaching and running games. But you're right. It was definitely more laid back, and easier to sit down and play and have fun and step away when you need to step away and just drop into things when you wanted to drop into things. The Artemis Spaceship Bridge Simulator, man, that was,
boy, that's a riot.
it is. Like somebody said, it's Star Trek with the serial numbers filed off. And it was a lot of fun. It was a blast. I'm sorry I only had the time to jump into one. Both times you guys were jumping into it. One of them I was in the middle of another game, and the other one I was on my way to dinner with my folks. So those were the other 2 times you guys went and jumped into games.
Yeah, and that's just tons of fun, and it's literally the best place I've ever been to do that, because there's no like extra charge. You just walk in and say, when does it start? 6. Okay, I'll be back at 6. You show up at 6, and they put you down, and you're the engineer, right? So it's fantastic.
And correct me if he's got 2 different bridges set up on either side of a partition in the middle of the room. So, not that those guys would necessarily play head to head, but he can run 12 at once. He can run 2 full bridges at the same time.
Yeah. And at one point, I'm not sure he had 12, but at least at one point he was running 2 separate groups.
Yeah.
One of which was full. The other one, I think, was one person short.
Yeah. Well, the one I jumped in, we had a 4-player game with you, me, and Lee from the war room, and then the stray dude that wandered in and got thrown into the community or the science console, and then the guy running the event actually stood in as our comms dude. Mm-hmm. And it was fun just with the 4 of us. I had a great time.
Yeah. It's even better with 6. To be honest, it's even better with 6 because it doesn't. The guy running it knows what he's doing, right? Part of the fun is that under ordinary circumstances, the players have struggled with the interface and accidentally blow up the civilian ships, and funny stuff happens. Narrative emerges more readily from 4 clowns doing it than the guy that knows what he's doing running the comms. Right? This is true. It would be fun to do that sometime with like a live camera going on the crew while we're doing it. It would be, yeah. You'd have to get make sure everybody was kosher with it, but that would be a fantastic time. Actually. Yeah, because you could do a couple of split screens where you've got the main screen that everybody's watching as a part of the broadcast, and a couple of ISO cams on a few people, and just have one producer sit back and sort of switch between the one big camera on the screen and like 2 or 3 side shots. Yeah, that would definitely make for some entertainment if you could run that sucker live. So absolutely. All right, with that, I think we're going to wrap this episode of Mention and Dispatches. Just as a note, we've got 2, maybe 3 episodes of this season left. If you get a chance, pop over to iTunes and throw us a rating. We like to beg for 5-star ratings. The reality is we will take any rating. We're still like 5 ratings short of the minimum we need to get iTunes to actually put us in their recommendation engine. You'd think after like 4 years of doing this, we'd have enough recommendations to do this. But I think everybody else is like subscribing to us through RSS feeds or some sort of podcast service and never goes to iTunes to click on things. So I gotta take a moment. I don't use iTunes. Yeah. Create a fake account, take a moment, go over there, give us a rating. We'd prefer 5. We'll take 1. Just give us a rating so we can start showing up in the recommendation engine if you get a chance. Gary, thank you for inviting us to be at Buckeye Game Fest in the first place, and then for joining us here for a wrap-up discussion of it. That was happy to be here, particularly given that you've been on camera or online pretty much for like 12 hours since you left Buckeye Game Fest. That's kind of true. Yeah. That's why my voice sounds fantastic on the internet right now. Yeah. Between your multiple shows plus this one, I do appreciate you taking the time to join us. So happy to be here. Audience, thanks for checking out Mention and Dispatches. Don't forget, we got Connections Online coming up this coming week. So if you get a chance to come join us for that, again, it's $5 for the whole week. This is a professional wargaming conference. This is not just a game convention like our ACDCs, but it'll give you a chance to see a very different side of wargaming and maybe learn something about how the pros do things in the serious game business, and maybe find some interesting perspectives you can take back to your beer and pretzels wargaming. And I'm not bagging on beer and pretzels wargaming. Like that's my bread and butter. That's where I come from. So but the professional perspectives can give you some new insight to what you're doing in those games, and that can be a lot of fun. So thanks, Gary. Thanks, audience, and we'll catch you guys next time on another episode of Mention and Dispatches.